Whitetail Rendezvous host Bruce Hutchin welcomes you to episode number 140.
Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, where it is all about whitetail deer hunting tips, techniques, and the stories so you can become a more successful whitetail deer hunter. And now your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Mark Kenyon of Wild to Hunt joins us today on Whitetail Rendezvous. Mark is the CEO and founder of Wired to Hunt podcast. Wired to Hunt podcast is the deer hunting blog for the next generation. He's also the director of digital content for the National Deer Alliance. He's also been heralded as a new media star by Outdoor Life magazine and featured on their April 2015 cover. Mark was also named the 2014 Quality Deer Management Association Communicator of the Year and has been published in Outdoor Life, North American Whitetail Magazine, Deer and Deer Hunting Magazine, Quality Whitetail Journal, and Whitetail News. He is also a Quality Deer Management Association certified deer steward. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. And ladies and gentlemen, we are very fortunate to have a gentleman named Mark Kenyon. Now, Mark is the founder and full-time managing editor of Wired to Hunt, both the blog and the podcast. He's also the digital content manager director at National Deer Alliance. And in April of 2015, he was on the cover of Outdoor Life magazine as the new media star in the outdoor industry. Mark was also named the 2014 Quality Deer Management Association Communicator of the Year. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Bruce. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you here, and let's just jump right into the fact of you gaining influence in building a substantial media career in the outdoor industry at, I'm going to call it a younger age. As we talked in the warm-up, I'm a little bit older than you are.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. So let's jump right in and let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very, very blessed and fortunate to be able to do what I'm doing now. Like you said, at a pretty young age, I'm 28 years old now, and my full-time career, kind of unbelievably, is to talk about and write about hunting in the outdoors, which is, kind of been my dream for a long time. And it's a long story that you probably don't want to hear, but long story short, was able to move from a career in the technology industry to now running Wired to Hunt and the Wired to Hunt podcast full time, and now also writing for most of the different hunting magazines out there and all of that. So it's something that took, as anyone might imagine, a lot of time and energy. When I really dove into Wired to Hunt in the fall of 2009. And I decided at that point, I just started my full-time career just out of college. And at that point, I decided, working a desk job in the technology industry, it's great. I appreciate it, but it's not what I'm passionate about. It's not what I know I'm going to want to do in the long run. So I'm going to double down on Wired to Hunt. I believe that I could build something there, a community and a resource for kind of the next generation of deer hunters. And, pretty much from that time on, from October 2009 till today, pretty much every single day of my life, I've been working on something related to that, whether it's creating, writing articles for the website or building the website or working on social media or writing for magazines or, recording podcasts and doing all these different things. It just took a lot of time and building relationships and trying to always be on the forward edge of what's going on and, trying to find a way to serve my audience. How can I be as beneficial and helpful to the people out there that are paying attention? And I've been fortunate that people have responded well to it and have appreciated it and found it interesting and useful. And here I am today to kind of just very thankful to be able to do what I'm doing now.
Mark, you mentioned a couple seconds ago about writing different articles. To share with our listeners, just run through the list of where your articles appear in the media.
Sure. So, of course, I write articles for my own website, wiredtohunt.com. And then also over the past years, I have written for Quality Whitetails magazine, which is the Quality Deer Management Association's publication. I've written for North American Whitetail. I've written for Deer and Deer Hunting, Whitetail News, Field and Stream, and Outdoor Life.
Now, do you have a regular article that's published in Outdoor Life?
So in Outdoor Life, I regularly contribute to their website. Usually weekly, sometimes several times a week on their website. I'm writing consistently there. When it comes to features in the magazine, that's more irregular, just more when I've got an article idea or when they specifically have an article they'd like me to write, then I get that in there. And that's kind of the same for all the other magazines. That's all on a freelance basis. So when I have time to send in queries and article ideas, I do that. I try to keep myself in those magazines as much as possible to stay active there. But the more and more things continue to grow with Wired to Hunt, I've kind of had to pull back a little bit on my writing elsewhere, just because I simply just don't have as much time as I used to. But still trying to continue writing for those publications because they're terrific resources and it's fun to be able to contribute in that way.
Well, the digital company that I write for, and I write Western State Profiles, is GoHunt.com, and Chris Porter runs that over there, and the content manager is Brady Miller. I don't know. Do you know those folks?
I know Brady a little bit. I don't know them personally, but I'm familiar with them.
Right, and so that's another takeaway that if you ever want an introduction to them, I've been working for them for over two plus years, or working with them. I'm a contractor or freelance with them, but they're great people and they've got great Western content. Which there are whitetails out here, but not. We're not part of the QDMA 37 states yet.
Yeah,
but we will be.
Yeah,
we will.
I've heard good things about Eastern Colorado.
Yeah, there's some big deer out there, and we're talking 200 class deer out there.
That's awesome.
It's tough to get on the land. That's the biggest thing. You'd think with hundreds of thousands of acre, 50,000 ranch, there'd be whitetails, but you gotta find the water. You gotta find the Arkansas. You gotta find the creeks that run throughout the year, and it's tough, but there are big deer out there. There's no question about it.
Yeah, sounds pretty cool.
So, what are three things that you would share with somebody that's sitting here that had the same passion as you? They're sitting in a career, but they just love the outdoors, guy or gal, and they're saying, hey, like you said, I'm going to double down and make this work. Obviously, if you look at your website and everything you produce, technologically, it's sound, and your writing sound. So, you're a perfect storm. I just look at it, the perfect storm, at the perfect time to help pass it on the hunting tradition in North America. So having said that, what are 3 to 5 things that you would share with young listeners who want to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I would just say, believe in it. There really are opportunities. There are absolutely 100% opportunities to make a living doing something that you're passionate about today, more than ever before, especially with the internet and all the different avenues that opens up. It's so easy to develop a platform and to develop relationships and a network. And those things used to be pretty difficult, I imagine 15, 20, 25 years ago, when you had to actually get to know people in person, or when you had to somehow convince a huge publication company to share your work based on just a sample letter you sent them or something. But today you can put yourself out there on the internet in a way that's very powerful. So I would say number one, believe in it. It's something that if you are really passionate about trying to make a living in this industry, just first and foremost, set your mind to it, believe in it, and then start working. Now, number two, I'd say, start creating something, start doing it, whatever it is that you are passionate about. If you want to work in the outdoor industry, let's say, I think first and foremost, you need to determine, in what aspect, where's my skill set, what are my strengths? So maybe you decide, okay, I want to be a writer, or maybe I know I can be great in video, or maybe I'm just great at designing websites. Whatever it is, figure out what your specific thing is and then start actively doing it. So like I mentioned, there's just tremendous opportunities online to start putting stuff out there and build a platform. So if you want to be a writer, don't worry about trying to get in Field and Stream or Outdoor Life or North American Whitetail right away. You start putting stuff out on your own website, create a little simple blog, and just start putting content out there and sharing it. And by doing that, by developing kind of a sample of work, you can then eventually have opportunities to get in front of other people who can give you, the chance to be in a magazine or on a popular website or whatever it might be. I mean, when I started Wired to Hunt, nobody was reading it. Nobody cared, but still every day for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, I was writing, and I was sharing it and trying to get better and trying to learn. And I think that persistence and constant creation of work, of actual written content or video content, or eventually, podcasts and all those different things. I think just by doing it, not only do you get better at it, but then eventually you have the opportunity for people to see that and to take notice of it. So that's number 2. I'd say start actually working on whatever it is that you want to be involved in the long run. And then finally, I think just relationships. It's something that, of course, over, eternity, forever, it's always been very important when it comes to success in the world or career. It's all about who you know and developing those relationships. And so the same thing goes in the outdoor industry. It's a big family. And especially now with the digital community, you can get to know people. And so, be active on all the different social media channels, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever it might be. You never know who you might chat with or who you might get to know through one of those different networks that someday might be able to offer you an opportunity to write for them or to video for them or a job, or might know someone who knows someone who's looking for a guy or girl just like you. So just get active out there, get to know people, be helpful, get engaged. And eventually I think if you do those 3 things, opportunities will come if you put your mind to it. It's not going to be easy. It's not something that happens overnight. I was just talking to a friend this morning about the fact that, this is something I've worked on for 7-8 years, working almost every single day for it. So it seems like this amazing thing that happened overnight, maybe, but it's taken a lot of time, and, it never was glamorous, but in the long run, it's been something I'm passionate about, and I'm okay with that because of it. So I think those are the 3 top things I would mention that hopefully would be helpful to someone trying to do something like this someday.
Hey, thanks for that. And listeners, I sure hope you're taking notes, because I'm taking notes, because as everybody knows, we started Whitetail Rendezvous on August 31st. So, I'm just pleased that somebody like Mark Kenyon took the time today to get on the show and share what he's done. So it'll help each and every one of you. Let's switch up gears a little bit. Let's talk about conservation. You've done a lot, I know, in the conservation arena. And so we'll just open that up for a few minutes, and let's talk about your relationship with conservation of whitetails.
Yeah. I think conservation in general is something I'm very passionate about, because as most of us probably listening to this podcast, right, we love hunting, we love the outdoors, we love wildlife and wild places. And, the older, now I'm not trying to say I'm old, but the longer I've been, focusing on these types of things and getting involved in all these things, I see more and more that I think, especially those of us that are blessed to make a living in the outdoor industry, but really anyone who enjoys the outdoors, we have an obligation to protect these places and to protect this resource and tradition for the future. And unfortunately, especially today and every year more and more so, there are so many threats to wildlife and wild places. It's just, there's so many different people and forces out there that aren't necessarily good for our tradition and our way of life. And so I think it's our obligation as hunters and anglers and outdoors people to work to protect those places. So for me, that's meant, number one, trying to use my platform, my media platform to educate people about what's going on out there and to encourage people to think about these things and to get involved and actually try to take some action on stuff. So whether that be, fighting to try to protect our public lands, or whether that's just improving the habitat on your private property, there's a lot of different things you can do out there. But for me, I've just tried to really become educated on the history of conservation and all sorts of different conservation and habitat related issues. And then, what's going on in the future, what's happening right now that might actually, impact our ability to hunt or our ability to have wild places where there are, sustainable populations of wildlife. So I've tried to be more and more involved every year. And this year especially, I'm really trying to take a more active stance on some of these things. So, I'm involved in the Quality Deer Management Association to quite a degree. Lots of great things going on there from a whitetail standpoint. I work with the National Deer Alliance, as you mentioned earlier, which is an umbrella group that's working with all the deer organizations to try to make an impact at a national level on policy issues. I'm also a member of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Trout Unlimited, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. So across the board, I just absolutely love wildlife and wild places and wilderness, and I think it is incumbent upon me to do everything I possibly can for the rest of my life, really, to protect those things, because there's nothing that means more to me than those resources, and I want to make sure they're available for other people and my children and grandchildren someday.
You sound like a young Shane Mahoney who spoke at the Quality Deer Management. And folks, if just Google Shane and you'll understand the breadth and the scope of what that man has meant to the North American model of hunting.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, he's incredible.
He really incredible. So listeners, that's a resource that you need to become familiar with. Let's talk about Quality Deer Management Association, where you're a certified deer steward. What does that mean? Yeah,
so the QDMA is just a tremendous resource across the board for anyone who wants to better understand white-tailed deer and how to manage them and help their habitat. But they put together a series of classes throughout the year called their Deer Steward classes. And I participated in one of those several years ago. It's the Level 1 course, which was a 2 or 3 day course. This was down in Missouri. I went there, and it's really an incredible opportunity to just sit down with some of the greatest minds in white-tailed deer research and conservation. Some of the founders or staff members of the QDMA and other researchers share essentially for 2 days everything you could possibly want to know about the biology of deer, about how to manage deer herds better, about how to manage deer habitat, and it goes very, very in depth over the course of, like I said, 2 full days. So I participated in that, and really what the goal of that course is to establish within someone that the foundation that someone needs to be an effective, qualified deer manager and hunter. So yeah, I was certified back in 2012 maybe. And I'd highly, highly recommend those courses. There's a second course, the Deer Steward Level 2 course, which is more in the field. The first course, which I did, was more kind of an in-class situation, and then you spent half a day touring a property and seeing some of the things in the field, while in the Deer Steward Level 2 course, you do more things in the field. And it sounds like a great class. I haven't been able to do it yet, but I definitely want to. So highly recommend those if you're looking to really develop a strong foundation to manage your property or an area for whitetail deer.
And if a listener wants to find out more information, where would they find that?
QDMA.com on their website there. I don't know the specific URL for the page just for the courses, but I know it's there. So QDMA.com and dig around there and you'll find the information for the courses.
Now, when you're speaking and working, with the conservation groups, do you volunteer or are you just on the media side?
So to this point, I have been more so just on the media standpoint. I have not done a whole lot of on the ground volunteer efforts with, improving habitat or anything like that in the mountains or anything along those lines. But that's something I want to try to do more of. I've definitely been the most active with QDMA. So done a number of different local events and things like that. And obviously very active from a personal standpoint on my own properties. But for the other larger organizations have just been trying to, essentially be a voice for them, use my media platform to try to spread the word, encourage people to be active and get involved. And then with the National Deer Alliance, I have been much more personally involved in doing everything from communications to going to events to helping do some of the behind the scenes planning, and trying to really help develop that into a strong, positive organization.
Let's talk about Craig Doherty and what he's doing under the umbrella of QDMA. on the National Deer Alliance. What a lot of people might not know, that you can join it for free, and its purpose is, and Mark's going to tell us.
Yeah, so Craig Doherty helped with the founding of the National Deer Alliance and was our first executive director. Now we do have actually a CEO and president who's in charge of the National Deer Alliance just as of a few months ago, and that's Nick Pinizzotto. And the National Deer Alliance's goal essentially is to work as an umbrella organization over top of the Quality Deer Management Association, Whitetails Unlimited, and the Mule Deer Foundation to try to help use the collective power of those organizations to influence policy and management decisions at a larger, higher level. You know, organizations like the QDMA or Whitetails Unlimited, they have their own individual goals to, you know, with the QDMA, right, they work a lot towards educating people about how to better manage their herds. Whitetails Unlimited does a lot of local events and things along those lines, but some of these organizations don't necessarily have the ability to consistently influence policy, you know, in Washington, D.C. or with state game agencies and different things along those lines. So with the NDA, we're trying to be that organization that at a high national level can start making some of those changes and making sure that the deer hunter's voice, whether it's mule deer or whitetail deer, making sure that the hunter's voice is heard in these different places where decisions are being made. So right now, you know, over the last year, the NDA was just started a year or so ago, and we've been working to be a resource, keeping our members up to date on every single different news and policy related item out there related to deer. And we're working towards now that we have a CEO and president, and getting the ball really rolling. I think we're going to start, you know, taking action on some issues and, you know, developing some tools to keep our membership, you know, abreast of what's going on in their area, how they can take action on something. So, you know, for example, let's say there's some kind of new law coming down the road in Colorado that's going to, you know, impact deer or deer hunters. We want to make sure that if that's happening, we can notify all of those deer hunters in Colorado and say, hey, this is happening. It's going to impact you or your deer herd, and you might want to know about it. And here's how you can take some action and actually influence things if you want to. So I think that's the long-term goal, is to be able to have that type of influence. And I'm excited that things are really starting to roll now.
Listeners, if you're taking notes, Mark's involved in the industry of whitetails, and it's a huge industry. And you might think it's a really big family, but it's a really small community where relationships are built by doing exactly the things that Mark just outlined. He is involved. He's immersed himself in the whitetail community. So if you're thinking about a career that would encompass whitetails, just listen to this young man, because he understands what it really takes. It takes years of work. It takes effort, and it takes raising his hand to be in some of the positions he is now. Mark, a few minutes ago, you just talked about your own land. So let's finish up the show and talk about whitetail hunting. And a lot of the listeners are going, this is all great, but what about hunting whitetails? What's some of Mark Kenyon's secrets about putting bucks on the ground, managing his herd every once in a while, taking a doe, doing predator control? So let's open it up about Mr. Whitetail and what you think about whitetail hunting today and where the future is.
Yeah, well, you know, whitetail hunting is really where it all started for me. I grew up hunting in northern Michigan. My grandpa had a cabin up there in the northern part of the state, and that's where I learned to sit in the blind and be quiet and watch for a little movement off in the distance, and just incredible memories growing up and learning those things from my family, my dad, my uncles, my grandpa. So just have had a really deep passion for deer my entire life. So that said, of course, now today, fortunate to be very involved in the whitetail world for a career, and given all of that, most of my spare time is also spent doing something deer related. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about things related to some of my deer hunting tactics if you want, or, you know, when it comes to just, you know, where the deer hunting world is today and where it's going tomorrow. I can speak to that too really quickly. Maybe I'll touch on that first, Bruce, and you can.
Well, let's do it this way. Let's bring in actual tips and techniques and lessons learned, and then let's you and I get you back on, and let's talk about the future of whitetail in North America, if that's okay with you.
That sounds great. Yeah. So I can share a few maybe my lessons learned. like you, Bruce, I run a deer hunting podcast, the Wired to Hunt podcast. And through that, I've had the opportunity to speak to some incredible deer hunters. And over the years as a writer and running Wired to Hunt across the board, have been, exposed to and had the opportunity to meet and learn from just a lot of guys and girls who really, really know what they're doing. So that's been a huge blessing. I've been able to take a lot of those things and apply them to, my hunting. So over all those years, I've been trying to up my game, to challenge myself more and apply these things to my hunting strategy. So, 7-8 years ago, maybe, I think I decided to start targeting mature deer. And when I started doing that, it definitely changed how I had to hunt. And I think a couple of the things now that I believe have made the greatest impact on my success have been understanding the impact of hunting pressure and understanding the importance of proper timing when you're hunting, where you're hunting. So I can elaborate on those two things. First and foremost, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone that's a pretty serious deer hunter, but one of the most important things you can do if you're trying to target mature bucks is limit your hunting pressure. So right at a very high level, if a buck, especially a mature buck, 3, 4, 5-year-old deer, if he knows he's being hunted, he's not going to follow his usual patterns during daylight, which is going to keep you from being able to hunt and eventually kill that deer. So, a huge part of my hunting strategy is doing everything I possibly can to minimize my pressure. So that means I'm hardly hunting at all unless I think optimal conditions are present and that I can get in without spooking that deer. I'm not hunting on the wrong days. I'm being very careful about when I go in and hunt, that I, as scent free as possible. I'm as quiet as possible. I access and exit in such a way that deer aren't going to know that I'm coming in and out. I'm not waltzing around my different hunting properties during the season or a few months before the season just to look around. I'm not scouting when I don't need to. When it comes to my hunting properties, they are managed very almost obsessively to make sure I maintain as safe of an environment, or these deer hopefully feel it is a safe environment, as much as possible. So I obsess over everything I can possibly do to keep these areas pressure free. So at a super high level, that is something that I'm very focused on. And ever since I started, having that focus, it's changed the type of success I have. Now, number 2, sorry, were you going to say something, Bruce?
I was going to ask, how many acres are you hunting?
So I hunt a lot of different places. I have a 90-acre farm in Michigan that I have permission on that I hunt a lot. I have permission on a couple other smaller places in Michigan that I hunt on sometimes. A friend and I share property in southern Ohio that's 90 acres. I hunt other states where I just knock on the doors and get permission. This past year, I hunted in Iowa on 2 farms that I got permission on just by knocking on doors. And those are much larger properties. The one was like 700 acres. Another was like 400 acres. So a lot of different spots. I'm constantly hunting new areas, new states, trying new things. But across the board, there's a lot of different spots I've experienced.
Let's go back to number 2 now.
Yeah. So related to pressure is timing. And this is maybe where I've found tied to pressure very, very much so, is that choosing when to hunt and where to hunt and being very, very thoughtful about it, I think makes a humongous difference. So I used to, when I first started trying to target mature deer, I used to think it was an issue of quantity. If I can hunt enough days, if I'm in the woods enough, eventually I'll get a shot. So, and I'm one of those, I like to believe I'm a hard worker. And so I always thought if I could work hard enough, I'll shoot a mature deer. So I would hunt every single possible day I could, every weekend, before work, after work, all the weekend days. I'd hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt. But what I didn't realize is that by doing that, by hunting all these days when maybe I wouldn't even have a good chance of seeing one of these mature bucks anyways, I was just putting a tremendous amount of pressure on those deer. Those deer were learning about it and changing how they behaved, and I would never have a chance at them anyways. So what I've done now is, instead of hunting more, I hunt less, but I'm hunting more high quality days. So I'm paying attention to specific conditions and factors that would influence whether or not mature bucks might move during daylight. So by that, I mean, I'm paying attention to the weather. I'm paying attention to the barometric pressure. I'm paying attention to wind direction and wind speed. I'm paying attention to the time of year. I'm paying attention to moon phase and rising and setting times, all those different things, which then lead me to which days, which evenings, which mornings I believe will possibly give me the greatest chance for success in a certain location. And then I'm not hunting that specific location until those factors are lined up. So because of that, I might not hunt a certain tree stand or a certain property more than once or twice a year. But those deer, when I do hunt that once or twice, they have no idea they're being hunted until the day I'm there. So if I made the right decisions and if I did the right things, when I go there to hunt, I've got the highest chance possible of seeing a mature buck, and he's not educated. So, for example, this past season, Michigan's archery season opens on October 1st. About a week before that, I had been planning on going to Ohio for that early October time period to hunt down there. But I did a little scouting run on one of my Michigan properties, and from a long distance, I was able to observe a little food plot I planted. And I saw that night 3 different mature bucks come out into that food plot just before dark. So I said to myself, all right, we know that there are some mature deer that I'm interested in hunting in this area using this food plot during daylight, which isn't necessarily a very common thing in this area. So this was kind of a situation where I said, whoa, the iron is hot. This is a great opportunity. So then I said, all right, when's the next great opportunity to hunt that stand? When would it be smart to hunt that stand? So I started looking at the different conditions, and I saw, all right, this night that I saw all these deer, I had X, Y, and Z all in my favor. The wind was right, the moon was right, and there was a little bit of a cold front. So that's probably why these deer came out to feed during daylight that night. So then I looked at the calendar and saw, okay, luckily, October 1st, opening day of archery season, I have those same factors again. I'm going to have a similar cold front hitting. I'm going to have a moon rising time that's coinciding with the last hour of daylight. And I've got great wind for me to get in there and hunt. So I decided, because of all these things that were in my favor, I was going to cancel my plans to go Ohio and instead hunt this tree stand specifically just for that one night to try to take advantage of those factors. And I went in there, I hunted, and I killed one of my target bucks that first night of the season. I think that was a good example of paying attention to those details and those factors and finding a way to get in there and take advantage of it when the timing is right. So there's a ton we could talk about, but those are 2 things.
Yes, there is.
Those are 2 things that I think have really helped me improve my success.
Mark, this is a time in the show that you get a chance, take a minute or 2 to give shout outs to sponsors, people that helped you along the way, and others that you want to give a shout out to.
Sure. Well, I won't run through all the different sponsors of Wired to Hunt. That could get boring, but of course, do appreciate all the companies that do support what I'm doing at Wired to Hunt and the Wired to Hunt podcast. And you can learn about all those different companies by visiting wiredtohunt.com. I think more than anything, and this is related to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, when you asked about, what do people need to think about if they want to get into this industry. I really, truly believe that I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for a whole lot of different people that were just very willing to take 5 minutes and talk to me, or take 10 minutes and introduce me to someone else in the industry, or give me a little feedback on an article, or share with me their story. There's too many individual people to mention, and I'll forget people inevitably. So I just want to say thank you to anyone and everyone who has in some way been a part of this very blessed journey I've had to get to where I am today that I'm very thankful for. So it's just great that one of the nice things about this hunting family, this industry, and just hunters in general, it's a big group of people that appreciate a lot of the same values and appreciate the value of helping other people. So I've been very fortunate to have that help, and I don't know. I think that's all there is to it. There's too many thanks to really give them all.
Thank you, sir, for being on the show, and we look forward to the next time.
Thanks a lot, Bruce. I appreciate having me, too. It was a lot of fun.
As your host at Whitetail Rendezvous, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time with us today. I look forward to sharing with you in the next episode more whitetail hunting tips, techniques, and stories. Until then, keep the sun at your back, the wind in your face, and always be patient.
If you have any tips, comments, or suggestions, or what we can do to improve, because we're here to serve you, let us know. Thanks for listening to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast at www.whitetailrendezvous.com.